Hello, Helmut. These are your carburetors, and I've tested them multiple times, and they are fabulous. I'm going to give you some handy hints about installing the carburetors. One thing you're going to do is you're going to want to install the carburetors loosely, and then install your air log on the carburetors. That way you can, because as you can see, this air log will not go in place. It refuses to go fit on the right hand carburetor. That's because the carburetors are not lined up to fit the air log. And what you're going to do is fit the carburetors up loosely so that they can flop, because they can flop up and down about 4 or 5 millimeters and from left to right. And so you're going to want them to where they can flop around, and then you can fit your air log in place, and then you're going to tighten up the carburetors just enough to where you can get the air log off and on. Just tighten up the top bolts, and then slide the air log off, and then get in there and tighten up the rest of the bolts. And this is one of the best tools that you can use, quarter drive flex sockets to get up underneath here, and the quarter drive is all you need. You do not need a great deal of torquing strength to secure these carburetors. Quarter drive will do just fine. One of the other important things you're going to want to pay attention to is when you are securing the fuel lines to the carburetors, you're going to use 2 wrenches, one to stabilize the fitting in the carburetor float bowl cover, and the other wrench is going to be doing the tightening on the fitting up to the float bowl cover. And the reason for that is you do not want to be wrenching on these fittings while you're tightening this, because what happens is it tries to rip the threads out of the float bowl cover. So always stabilize these fittings. Always stabilize those fittings. Now then, cold engine, and you can see down here we got cold. You got no temperature, and so we're going to check the cold start function with the chokes. One thing you do to check the choke functioning while the airlog is installed is to activate the choke just a little bit, and then come over here and let's get this up here. Okay, and then you want to see if that will. Alright, let's get this up here. Alright, now you want to see if this will flop, which is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to flop around like that. And it's going to hang up on this end over here because the linkage is there, but you just want it to be able to flop like that. And the same thing over on the far end. This is to check the choke mechanism when the airlog is in place. Now then, make sure that when you do mount these, you use the factory instructions for mounting with the bushings and the use of the wave washers, the DIN 137 8mm wave washers that go underneath the base of the carburetor to the rubber intake manifold. Most people find that confusing, but the rubber intake manifold gasket will seal up around that 8mm wave washer. And what that wave washer is doing is acting as a limit stop for the bushing inside that is supporting the carburetors. And if you don't have that wave washer in there, that bushing will dig into the base of the carburetors. It also acts as a limit stop for when you're tightening down the carburetors, so that all that stuff compresses to the exact right factory specified distance, and you will not be able to over tighten the carburetors and potentially snap an ear off. Fuel system, clean fuel system is imperative. These carburetors do not like any kind of grit in the fuel, and I mean microscopic grit. Let me give you a few, let's take a tour here. What will happen when you have grit in the fuel system is, make sure this is on macro. Yeah, I think that's macro, I believe. What you'll have is, when you have grit in the fuel system, is it will get clogged up in idle jets, G55 idle jets, and these have a very tiny hole in them, and it's very easy for a fleck of almost microscopic grit to get in there. So if the car will not idle, but you can accelerate just fine, blip the throttle just fine, and if you bring it back to idle, it stops, it dies. One of these jets is clogged up, and all these operate on is the first barrel of each carburetor. So if you have a clogged jet, you can actually swap it over to the other jet. You can swap these because this jet is just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. Idle mixture screws, these are already adjusted for you, but we'll go through the adjustment process, and this is something that you'll be able to adjust to your engine. It's a simple procedure of adjusting this in and out until you get the engine running at the exact right speed. Again, the engine is idling only on the first barrel, and these are only adjusted when you're idling, and they are the second barrel is dummied, and these are just stuck in place to plug a hole and look good. They don't operate, don't do anything. They don't touch the screws on the second barrel. One thing you want to double check is the relationship between the throttle linkage and this bracket and your second barrel butterfly. And when you accelerate, when you open up the throttle, and then you go, and then the vacuum starts to accelerate and pull the second barrel forward, so the second barrel opens up. Can't do this and hold the camera at the same time. So when the second barrel opens up, when you release the throttle, what happens is that this mechanism down there, you can see that it's starting to rotate back. That mechanism impinges on a pin on the second barrel carburetor linkage, and what it does is it artificially closes the second barrel. And the reason I'm mentioning it to you is because you have to have this these screws right here adjusted properly. This is a jam screw right here. This is a jam screw, and this is the screw that goes down and touches the pin. And you want just a little bit of play. You can see it right here. Just a little bit of free play, because if you screw this screw down too far, you can actually hit the pin, and then the further you screw, you are actually opening up the first barrel carburetor artificially and increasing the idle artificially. So you got to make sure that whenever you adjust your linkage, get your idle set, that the last thing you check is to make sure you've got proper adjustment on that guy right there. Just a little bit of movement right here. So in other words, if you unscrew this jam screw right here, and then you screw this down further, it'll start screwing down so far that it'll actually start opening up the first barrel. Tuning, always tune the carburetors with the linkage undone, so that you're tuning the carburetors independently of each other. You're going to want to use the synchrometer. See if you can read that. It's a great thing made in Germany, I believe. STE synchrometer, and the version you want is the BK 1 to 35 kilograms per hour. This version right out of the box fits the 190SL perfectly. And what you're going to be doing is checking your airflow. So because you want the same airflow coming from each carburetor. Now, another thing that we've been very diligent about is using factory gaskets, which you can see are red, and this is red right here, and so those are factory gaskets. They hold up the best. And in terms of machine work, we've got new throttle shafts, new throttle shaft bushings, we've got new butterflies. All the flat surfaces have been milled properly and trued up. We've got idle mixture screw ports have been redone. The carburetor has essentially been remachined, remanufactured. Alright, so let's get to operating some carburetors. And See, I'm going to suggest, you will know how your car operates best, but I'm going to suggest a couple of blips of the throttle, making sure you've got fuel in the barrels. Obviously, you've already activated your fuel pump priming lever to make sure your float bowls are full. I got the switch on. Choke. Nope, it didn't have the battery attached. Let me just attach the battery. Alright. May have flooded them by screwing around with them. Now notice, as I move the choke, the idle increases. And that's because there's a little lever. I should have showed you that earlier. How's that for a cold carburetor? Settles right into an idle. Now then, this little screw right down here is set at 15 thousandths clearance between the throttle lever and the choke lever, and that's what activates the throttle linkage. When you move the choke lever, you are actually moving the throttle linkage. So I'm going to choke, and you can watch the throttle move. You can see that. So you're actually moving the throttle, and that's part of why the choke cable is so hard to pull. Speaking of the choke cable, this is one of the things that you can adjust on the carburetors, and this are the jam nuts and the set screws for adjusting the angle of dangle of the levers for the choke cable. You got about 3 feet of choke cable coming straight down and attaching here and pulling straight up. At the same time, these things are trying to describe an arc, so you've got them fighting each other. At the same time you're doing that, you are pulling against all your throttle linkage, including your throttle return spring, so that's why the choke feels very hard to pull. It is not uncommon for the choke to feel hard to pull. Let's see, we can't do anything until we get the engine warmed up. While we're doing that, I think well, I think I'll just rev it up. We'll get what we'll do. I'm going to get a flashlight and we'll do some more checking. Now we wait for this thing to warm up. Alright, let's give you some more diagnostic handy hints. And if you can see this nozzle, this brass nozzle right here, brass nozzle in this upper quadrant, that brass nozzle right there, notice there's no fuel coming out of them. Well, it's not supposed to be until you accelerate the vehicle. If fuel starts to drip out of there, it's because of this brass check valve right here is stuck, has a little piece of grit in it, and you have to watch out for that. And if you do have a little drip out of here, it's called a rolling mist, and it gives a little blip or a little burp to the idle. But that's real easy to check and just clean out this check valve. But then every once in a while, those things will, blip anyway, and you don't know what it is, and then the next time you start the car, you'll run just fine as if nothing ever happened. Very common problem. Again, that's why I say fuel injection was invented because of Solex carburetors. Now then, we've got water temperature now, so we can adjust carburetors. What you want to do is you're going to disconnect the linkage, making sure that this carburetor does not artificially open and run away with itself. And what we're going to do is check our airflow first of all. Let's check our second barrels. Factory on the second barrel is about a reading of 2 on this synchrometer, and anything below 2 is what we're looking for. You see that one didn't even move, or it's maybe up around 1. This one didn't even move. Still, yeah, you can see it hardly even moved. So we're good there. That means the second barrels are closed. And if you have any questions about it, just push on the counterweight. Now we're going to check to see how much airflow we've got going through the first barrel of each carburetor. Obviously, I've already adjusted these. So right there, we're reading 5.5 over here. Reading 5.5. If you don't like that reading, if you want your idle higher, well, you just come here to your idle screw, and turn it in. You say let's turn to quarter turn. Do the other one a quarter turn. Let's go back, and now we've got an increased idle. Let's check our numbers. Now we're up to about 7. And up to about 6.5. So what we can do is I'm going to back this one off. Make sure back this one off. So we're over here at 6.5. Come over here. 6.5. So that's how you adjust your idle. Idle mixture screw. No secret there. What you're going to do is screw it in and out. Screw it in until the engine starts to stumble. Screw it out until the engine starts to stumble, and get the midpoint. Starting to stumble, and you hear it almost died. Back it out. Starting to stumble again. Run it back in and get our midpoint, where it feels and sounds the best. Starting to degrade a little bit there. Okay, now we come over here, do the first barrel, first carburetor, same thing. Starting to degrade. And if I go very far, you can hear it really start to degrade. Doesn't take much. This is a fairly delicate, precise needle valves here. Starting to degrade again. So we go back and get our midpoint. Back right somewhere around there. And again, this is something you can adjust. It depends, probably has something to do with atmospheric conditions. Who knows? That's the fun of carburetors. Now then, your next mission is to adjust your linkage to where all you've got to do is just snap this in place and nothing changes. And that's why there's a turnbuckle right here. So we snapped it in place. And we go back in, we check our readings. We got 6.5. Back to 6.5. Nice carburetors. Let's try a hot start. The hot restart. Helmut, these are some seriously nice carburetors. I think you'll be very happy. I am. These are really, really nice carburetors. And should give you many years of service. Obviously, I'm a phone call or an email away if you need anything. Just let me know. Thanks. Bye.